All right, next for my flight tomorrow, he wants me to go over steep turns. We flew these last time, but we didn't get to explain it because we were trying to beat some rain. So he just wanted me to get some practice, but I didn't explain it. So I'm gonna explain it tomorrow, but we're not flying it. We're gonna start with the why. So I combined the why and the what of the maneuver because I feel like they tie into each other, but why we're doing it, it teaches students how to maintain control in unusual attitudes. And by unusual, I mean just not your typical attitude of flying. So we're not usually banking 45 to 55 degrees. It requires division of attention because you should mainly be referencing outside references. So you should be looking at the horizon. You should also be referencing your instruments inside. So looking at your vertical speed indicator to see if you're climbing or descending, your altitude to make sure that you're staying on your altitude, make sure you're checking your airspeed, make sure that if you bugged your heading, and we're doing a 360-degree turn, so as we're coming back around, we're gonna wanna make sure that we check that to see if we're getting close to it. So it's requiring division of attention because we're looking outside and we're also looking inside the cockpit. And coordination, because not only are we having to adjust our pitch for our climb and descent, but we have to adjust the power when we get into the maneuver, and it's going to require constant changes in the pitch and in the bank of the airplane because we're trying to keep our bank at 55 if it's a commercial steep turn, but if we start to lose altitude, we might want to take a little bit of that bank out so we're not losing as much vertical lift. And we're also going to want to adjust our pitch if we are losing or gaining altitude. So, and also you're going to experience the overbanking tendency of the plane. So I actually explained the overbanking tendency of the plane different when I did it with my instructor this morning, and he really liked how I explained it. So I'm going to take out how I explained it in this video and explain it in a voiceover, the better way of explaining it. So basically, picture the airplane in a turn. So the airplane is banking. One wing is lower than the other one, and the wing on the inside is having to travel less distance than the wing on the outside, because obviously, as we know, if we run on the inside of a track, the distance is going to be shorter than if we run in the outer lane of a track. But both wings are finishing the turn at the same time. So that means that our outside wing is moving faster. It's producing more lift. And because of that, the plane, since we're in such a steep bank, it wants to keep banking in the direction that we are banking. It wants to keep banking further. So we have a bank in a 55, but the plane wants to bank to 60, 65. So when you experience that in steep turns, you're going to have to add the correct control inputs to counteract that because we don't want to overbank the plane. In a shallower bank, let's say we're banking 10 degrees, we're not really going to experience the overbanking tendency of the plane because of the stability, stability tools that have been installed in the airplane to kind of correct the overbanking tendency. But of course, as we add more bank and the bank is steepened, the overbanking tendency becomes more prominent, just like how our left turning tendency becomes more prominent when we add more power. Same thing, the steeper the bank, the more the overbanking tendency is going to become a problem. So now we're going to get into how we do it. Start off, we're always going to start our maneuvers with crack. So clearing turns, we're going to do radio calls, get our altitude and our airspeed. setup and configuration of the plane. What I like to do before a steep turn is we're going to get the airplane trimmed out. So we want to have the airplane flying straight and level at a good power setting, at a good airspeed, and the plane is trimmed out for straight and level that we could take our hands off the controls and it would fly straight and level. We're going to want to check our airspeed and make sure it's not exceeding our VA, which is our maneuvering speed. Then we're going to want to check on our power. It should be, I like to start with mine around normal cruise power, which is 2350 RPMs for my plane. And then I like to check my altitude and make sure that I'm at least 1,500 feet AGL. So in my area, we'd have to be at least 2,500 AGL, but honestly, I might even do it higher than that. And then lastly, get your heading checked. So pick a reference outside the plane. So whether that's a, if there's, like a big, if there's a lot of smoke out in front of you, maybe you pick that, or a really tall building, or way off in the distance, you can see a lake or something. Pick something that's right in front of you, and then bug your heading inside the cockpit while you're facing on that heading of the outside reference. Once you have all that set up, now we can think about getting into the maneuver. Getting into the maneuver, how I've always been taught is to bank 30 degrees. And then once we bank 30 degrees, we're going to continue to bank, but that's when we're going to add power. So we're going to add it to around 2450 RPMs. Then we're going to, as we're continuing to bank and we've added our power in, we're going to bank all the way over to 55 degrees. 55 degrees is the bank that we are going to want to try to maintain throughout the whole steep turn. So once we bank to 55 degrees, now we want to make sure that we're maintaining our altitude, because as we bank to 55 degrees, we're losing, so we have our vertical lift. When we add in bank, we're also contributing to our horizontal lift. So part of this vertical lift is getting contributed to the horizontal lift because we're banking so much. So we're losing the vertical lift. So before it was up here, it's now going to be down there. So we're going to have to adjust to keep from losing altitude, which is why we add power, but also we're going to have to maintain a certain pitch. So what I like to do is pitch up to about +5 degrees on my attitude indicator, and usually that keeps me around maintaining my altitude. I might have to adjust a little bit as I go. I might start descending in one point of the turn and I might have to increase it to +6 degrees, or I might start climbing. I might have to push the nose down a little bit, but 0.5 usually gets me around where I want to be at. So then as I'm in the turn, so what you're going to do is a 360 degree turn. So this is where you're starting and you picked a reference point out here. So that's our reference point. We bugged our heading. We're going to begin our turn this way and come all the way back around. Once we get to about here, which let's just say it's 10 degrees off of our starting heading, that's when we're going to start rolling our wings level, because you're not, as soon as you start rolling your wings level, you're not immediately going to stop on the heading that you're at. So we don't want to start rolling wings level at our heading because we're going to end up going past it. So we want to start back here so that way we end up landing on our heading. So once you're in the turn and you're holding your pitch, you're holding your altitude, you want to be looking outside your nose. So this is the horizon. The nose of the airplane should be cutting through the horizon, just kind of like that. So when you look out, the nose should be going through the horizon, slicing through it. And then when you look back inside, you should see that your vertical speed indicator isn't showing a climb or descent. Your altitude is still at the same altitude you started at. Your heading should be moving because we're making a turn, and your airspeed should be at whatever the airspeed you started at, so 100-ish. And then when we come back around, we're going to roll the wings level. Since we added this extra bit of power, and because now since we're taking out our bank, we're losing horizontal lift, so this is going to decrease a bunch, and this is going to increase again. So what the nose of the plane is going to want to do is balloon. So as we take out our bank, because of the extra power and us losing horizontal lift, the nose of the plane is going to want to balloon. So what we need to do so that we don't gain a bunch of altitude at the back end of our maneuver, we should push the nose over and then take out that power. So power should go back to cruise power, and the nose should be pushed over. And we should be on our heading, we should be on our starting altitude, airspeed should look good, and our power should be set to cruise. Then you have to do one in the other direction. So what you should do is just get started in the other direction. Bank 30 degrees, add your extra touch of power, continue banking to 55, pitch up to that 0.5 on your attitude indicator, hold your altitude, hold your airspeed, make that 360-degree turn, and then roll out 10 degrees before your starting heading. And you should also be referencing your reference point and your heading when you're rolling out. So when you see your reference point coming up, maybe take a glance out inside and see like, oh, we're 15 degrees away from our starting heading. So once I see it get to 10, I'm going to roll. And then double check outside again and see, okay, yeah, I'm rolling my wings level and it looks like we're pointing right at my reference point that I picked. So always be cross-checking with whatever's outside that you are using and what's inside. That's useful for us. So that is steep turns. We talked a little about vertical lift and horizontal lift and the overbanking tendency and all of that. So yeah.